Good morning. It's April 10th, 2020, Good Friday. It's 48 degrees in here, 48 outside. This is going to be a little bit of a continuation from my video of the 5th. No, that was, it was the 7th. It was on the 7th. The one on the 7th, on the commercialization of the pandemic, the scandemic, I wanted to point out two movies that really fit, that or explain or emphasize or concentrate on that theme. And they were both science fiction movies. Sort of science fiction. One was They Live. That's a classic, about the glasses where the guys put on the sunglasses and they can see all the commercial advertising. And the other one is Idiocracy, about a guy that ends up in the future with this other gal that he didn't even know. And it's about how the corporations have taken over the world. And the corporations, as I've said before, are just geared to one thing, see? So it's an automatic thing. Once you get into that corporation, you're railroaded into one thing. And that's what the whole movie is, basically. It's kind of a comedy, but it's actually one of the most educational movies out there about the real world. You have to watch it if you haven't seen it already. It's an education about how commercials, advertising has taken over and runs the world. So those two really bring out what I was attempting to say in my last video on the 7th. Now, this video is, I'm going to concentrate on one thing that's been gnawing on me since the beginning of February. And that is that if this was such a pandemic, the one thing that didn't fit was, why didn't Bill Gates and all the vaccine manufacturers already have a virus close to marketing or be able to market when all this carries out? Why wait for 6 months or whatever for a virus to come out to be able to implement the further program of what the scamdemic is? That you have to get vaccinated, or that you all want to run down and get in line and get vaccinated. So you'll be even more controlled, like the movie They Live. Because the more you're watching TV and listening to radios, the less you're going to be doing things independently on your own. And therefore, the powers that be, the elite, won't be able to control you. So, anyway, that was the one thing that just said, I don't have this full picture or a fuller picture, or does anyone else, because that's kind of like a red flag. Well, I think it was about April 5th on Coast to Coast. I watched it, or listened to it the next night. This one radio station that I pick up carries the program the night it's on, and then the next, before the show comes on, they repeat the night before. And that was the case with this, and they had a guest on. His name's Shepard Ambellis. I'll leave a link to his website. But he brought up an interesting theory. Now, I don't completely go along with this, with the way he explains it, and I'm going to go into detail on from how I understand it. I'm going to go back into the importance of models. Now, you're all hearing the model of how they're prophesizing or projecting how many people are going to die from coronavirus or how many are going to get sick. And they keep repeating that over and over on the TV and the radio and the printed media that's all controlled by the elite. Those are models that they're going by. And then they come out with, next week with another model, and because the model they were working with proved inept, incorrect. And in some of my earlier videos, maybe it was this past fall, I gave the story. I think I also had it last year about March, about that repetitive dream I had, or nightmare, when I was a little kid. Actually, it started when I was still a babe in the crib, about a model of the universe, how the cosmos works. And I use the idea about a coat hanger, how you hang a coat hanger on one end and then another coat hanger on the other end. And if you could picture each one of these coat hangers having another two coat hangers on each end, and that's called a mobile. And when you swing one, all the other coat hangers start swinging because of that one point of pressure. And they're all connected. That's a good way to, if you can picture a whole bunch of coat hangers hanging in the sky, and then, you touch one and how it influences the other coat hangers. Another model would be, you've seen the experiment where they put a whole bunch of mouse traps and set them, and then they carefully put a ping pong ball on each mousetrap, and they have a whole room, a whole gymnasium full of mousetraps all over, laying about that far apart. And after they've got all that done, they take a ping pong ball in their hand and they toss it out there, and it hits one, and that causes the mousetrap to fly the ping pong ball, and then pretty soon you see all the other mousetraps flying and all these ping pong balls going all over the place. That's a little bit like the coat hanger. And that's a model of the universe and how all the planets and the stars react to each other. Well, you can also picture that each coat hanger is being you, and another coat hanger being somebody else. And that's how we all interact with one another. Well, this Shepherd fellow, he's been doing research for decades, and he's been specializing in this pandemic, this viral pandemic. And one of the universities, one of the colleges he was looking at, I think it was John Hopkins, I'm not sure, don't quote me on that. He found that they are also doing tracking of what's out around the planet, asteroids, comets, and anything out there. They're tracking, and then they have a model of how these come close near-Earth orbits. Now, here's where I'm going to tell you the way I see it, as it's based on my studies of the electric universe. Now, the electric universe theory is fairly recent, and there's really no total agreement on how it is, and I've been studying it pretty much on my own because I don't want to be compromised by the other people studying. So whoever has the best model on the electric universe hasn't really come out yet because it's so new. But most people, including Shepard, are talking about a collision or a near collision with the Earth. And what I want to say in this video is you're missing the point if you're thinking about collisions or very near collisions, because depending on how much the electrical charge is or the ionization of one body that's coming by the Earth and how big it is, or the mass of it, or the amount of metals is in it, or there's so many things out there that can have an influence on our planet, Earth. And you could actually make a list of them, and there's many. And hitting the planet or very close to the planet is way down on this list. It's the electrical charge on that body compared to the Earth's body, which is higher on that priority. I can't remember what year it was. Maybe it was 2017. There was an asteroid. No, well, not an asteroid. Now, what's the smaller one? Meteorite. That just a small one that went sort of close to the planet Mars. And this was only reported just a little bit. There was reaction by the planet of this passing meteorite, and it showed up in all sorts of electrical disturbances and dust storms on the planet, and that's an important thing because some of these people that have studied the electric universe theory, one guy, I can't remember his name, but he was claiming that big canyon that's bigger than the Grand Canyon on Mars, that big cut, he says that wasn't erosion or anything that most people say it was. He says it was caused by the spark jumping from a passing body and striking the surface of Mars and causing all the material there to blow out. And if you kind of look at it, it looks, like it. Have you ever seen where a lightning bolt has struck the Earth, in some farmer's field or something? It causes a big ravine, a gouge in the planet, or in the soil in the field. And it's actually quite similar to the looks of that big canyon on Mars. That's the electric universe happening. Now you'll also see a little tiny speck of a meteorite or asteroid going by the sun, or they're hitting the sun, or it doesn't have to hit, it just goes by. I mean, it's just a little speck compared to the entire planet. And if you follow the sun a lot, I'll give a link to that on spaceweather.com. There's a few other better websites that do a good job, but that's the one I've been following. There'll be a solar flare or an ejection from the surface or the atmosphere of the sun when that asteroid or meteorite goes close or burns up in the atmosphere of the sun. That's the electric universe principle you're seeing. It's not talked about much because it doesn't fit into the theories that are accepted by modern science. And as I've said in my other videos, that's what all these solar observations were, such as Stonehenge and all these stone circles all over the earth. It was back in the days when the civilization was advanced and knowledgeable enough that they knew what was happening out in the heavens, out in the cosmos, affected what was happening here on the planet, and also what they were doing affected the cosmos. That's what a lot of people think or get confused about sun worshipping. The different supposed sun worshippers in the Central America and South America, and some claim that even Egypt was that. And then they performed all these blood sacrifices to the sun. Well, that actually only occurred as the civilization was collapsing. It happened at the end, when it had degenerated right before the fall. Earlier, at the beginning of the civilization, was actually the highest order. And all these civilizations going back, including Atlantis and Lemuria or Mu, fit this pattern. It's most studied and understood, although it's not recognized again by officialdom, that Egypt, the further you go back studying Egypt, actually the higher the civilization was, the further back you go. And that doesn't fit into the accepted Darwinian theories on how we start as a bunch of savages, and then over the centuries we develop into a super civilization of all-knowing. Well, it's actually more the other way around. Suddenly there's a springing of a knowledgeable people and civilization begins, and because they don't follow universal laws, they degenerate over the period, and then they eventually end up in blood sacrifices, much like a lot of the elite in the Hollywood and Epstein people are drinking blood and eating children, scaring them first, and then consuming their blood because they get more energy from that blood sacrifice. And you could even say 9/11 was a 3,000 person sacrifice to implement the New World Order programs. And you could say that's what the pandemic is, the Plan-demic, the scam-demic going on right now. It gets the people, the crowd mentality going where the elite want it to go. So that's it in a nutshell. This shepherd is talking about a near-Earth not an asteroid, but a meteorite or body coming by the Earth on the 29th of April. And I looked it up on space weather, and sure enough, there's on the 29th. And it's something like 14 lunar distances out, so it's pretty far out. But it's fairly large. If you'll look over on the right side of the chart, they have the size, and then they have the speed, and then they have the L, which is the lunar distance, and each one of those ones is one lunar distance. Unfortunately, they don't give the makeup of what the body is. Now, Shepard's saying that the orbit of this particular body tracks close to Earth for a little while after. So he's saying that this influence or possible hit is what he's saying, but I'm saying no. All it has to be is close. Depending on the electrical charge and what is made up of that body relative to the Earth, that's what's important. Now, the elite, the powers that be, could have their ways of influencing bodies so developed to an art, just like they have the geoengineering with the chemtrails and everything, to a degree, or they think they do. They may be able to control this body that's coming by the 29th. Or they may mess it up. But, as I've said in my other videos, we, as individuals or as a collective body, as a cosmic consciousness experiment influence, like Coast to Coast and what Art Bell talked about, some of us getting together could influence a body, or influence the weather, or influence our own lives, or something like that. Hope if you've done a little bit of study in that, you'll get what I'm talking about. Now, Art Bell was saying that he didn't want to mess with this anymore, because if you don't do it right, and it's very hard to, you could make a mess of it. You could, he says, don't be leery of what you wish for, because you may get it, but not exactly like you wanted it. That's very true, very wise. Anyway, and that's what this sun worshipping was all about. There was that connection between the people and the sun, and so the elite that ran the civilization that was in Central America. They'd kill all these people, and then they would get better weather. The rains would come, in theory. Well, to a degree that works, just as you see what happened in 9/11 after 3,000 souls went up to heaven. The elite got their wish. They got their wars. They got people scared. They got the so-called Patriot Act passed. You see, there really is something to that. But you can mess it up. And my theory is, don't mess with Mother Nature, because you may not like what you get. The cosmos was doing quite well without mankind messing with it. In a sense, you should live and let live, but you should live a clean life, and you should treat the earth as a living Gaia, or Gaia, however you pronounce it. So you should love Earth. You should take care of Earth. You should farm it with the utmost intelligence and wisdom. And that's what the whole Garden of Eden was all about again. Let's see, that's 25 minutes. I've really given the highlights of what I'm talking about. So you don't need to panic that this asteroid or meteorite on the 29th is going to destroy the planet, but it is going to have an effect, just like the Plan-demic is having effect. You can use it positively, or you can mess up your chance when the reboot or the restart of the economy gets going in another 6 months or a year or 2 years or whatever. You need to try to plan your life and run it according to how you want it to do, and not so much about how the elite, the New World Order, the One World Orders want it to do. That's why I'm saying if you would get with your county and organize, you could have control of your lives better than letting some rich people, letting the Bill Gateses and the George Soroses run your life. Incidentally, speaking of George Soros, some people have made the claim that he fronted a lot of money for the research facility in Wuhan, China. And my story is that the bioweapon or the virus was produced in Fort Detrick, Maryland, and some of the other universities here, and it was sold or passed on to China, or it was taken over there by some of the soldiers and released on that war games that they had in Wuhan, China, right before, what was that, January or December? January 2020. Anyway, there was some hanky-panky going on, and the evidence is in the beginning, the first week of August 2019, Fort Detrick facility was shut down because they realized it had been compromised in June or July of that year, and it was closed. And I'm saying, and some of the other people, they're saying that's when the coronavirus, or a number of them, got purposely released or accidentally released. And so this virus has been with us since fall, since September, and it was covered up by blaming it on the e-cigarettes. These people were having trouble breathing, and it was probably this virus, or it was a chemical release or biological or something, and it was spreading throughout the planet already at that time. And if a lot of you people that really are noticeable rather than what's fed to you by the media, this flu season there was a lot of flus that were kind of out of the normal, and that's why, according to the media story, it exploded so quickly in February or January of this year. But actually, it had been going on for months and months, and that's why it, according to the media, suddenly exploded, but it was already prevalent. spreading across the planet. But it's not that dangerous unless you have a compromised immune system. However, it is very contagious, and it's contagious for a much longer period of time, maybe a couple of months, maybe longer. And so it is a pandemic in a sense, but it's overblown. I mean, look. But they're using this as to blame the crash in the economy, when a lot of people like myself have been saying it's been coming for years, because they're kicking the can down the road. It's one big bankruptcy. Anyway, Shepard also said that there's Planet 9 is going to be in the close proximity this May 2020. And that's what this blue Katrina, or Planet X and everything, and double moons and stuff. And he's saying that that's 5 times bigger than the planet Jupiter. But there again, it's the electric universe theory. And whether there's reptilians on the planet or not, or entities in the spirit form, there's an influence from that body. Whether it's halfway across our solar system or not. It doesn't have to hit the planet, or it doesn't have to scrape the planet, or it doesn't have to come really close to the planet. The influence of it, what the electrical charge is in relationship to Earth, the consciousness of that planet in relationship to the Earth, all that plays a bigger part of the communication, the relationship between the two planets, our consciousness. And if we all kind of get together in our consciousness and make it positive rather than the doom and gloom of the media and the elite, who, by getting you programmed into their program, are controlling your minds, brainwashing you to get what they want accomplished, their agenda, instead of you people making this a heaven on earth by your agenda, or our agenda. And that's what they talk about love, rather than hate. That's where I talk about the tree of good and evil as opposed to the tree of life. And my cover photo, I'm going to stick another of that wonderful tree that I camped under, and I'm going to use that as a cover art photo. One of the most magnificent trees that I experienced personally. And I took my shirt there and I hung it on the trunk so you could see the relationship of how big that trunk and how the arms are. Well, that's the tree of life, as opposed to the tree of good and evil, where everything is good and everything is bad, and the so-called good guys are actually the bad guys, but they've got you brainwashed into thinking that they're the good guys. Anyway, that's 34 minutes. Review this again, and I know I'm going out on a limb, but I'm going to say that there's going to be a lot more influences in May than this month. And I expect that they're going to have the country closed down in you hiding in your homes. And incidentally, if you've got deep basement, you might hang out more from the 29th on. Or if you've got an underground bunker, or you've got an aluminum foiled wrapped house, or even a aluminum trailer, you may have a little bit more protection, just like you would from 5G network, or the 4G network, or all the cell phone towers. They're bombarding you all the time. They're messing with your consciousness. They're messing with your memory, like I have trouble remembering some certain things. It's all this electrical influence. But remember, electricity is not all bad. It's good. It's depending on the cycles and all the complicated things of what electricity is. It's all vibration. So, hopefully I've made some sense and I've picked up some new people that are awakening by this video. I'm sure I've made more enemies too. The electric universe, that's the future. And have a good future out there and make connection with the higher forces on your own rather than the lower devil Luciferian forces that want you to become a Satanist. Bye now. Hang in there. Be good.